PrimeMediaPlus.com. Your connection to what matters most.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teen Junction podcast with me, Cindy Poluta. As always, to our regular listeners, thank you for coming back. To our new listeners, welcome to our family, wherever you're listening to us from, Spotify, Apple Music, PrimeMediaPlus.com. Please like and subscribe our podcast so more people will be made aware of it and can share it. This is a podcast and a safe space for parents and caregivers, even teenagers, if you want to be listening to this. As discussed in previous episodes, adolescence is no longer just the teen years. It's no longer just 13 to 19. It's 11 to 25 because that is when your brain is developing. Today's topic is a very important one. The teenagers, the adolescents, you're not going to like it. The adults yourselves, some of you are going to feel very nervous about it, but it's a worthwhile one. I can't believe it's taken me this long to have this conversation. It's about cell phones, it's about screen time, and it's about how it's affecting us mentally, physically, developmentally, all of it. We're going to chat about it. We're going to have robust conversations because they're not going anywhere. As I've always said, as parents, you wouldn't put your child in a car without giving them the driver's license, without giving them the lessons and making sure that they are responsible and able enough to actually drive the car. So why are we gladly just handing a cell phone over, allowing them access to social media, allowing them access to this big wide world without us ourselves knowing what's happening and what the dangers and the effects are, right? So to help us today, I've called in two remarkable women from Smartphone Free Childhood South Africa, which we are just going to call SFC for the rest of the show because I can't get my tongue around Smartphone Free Childhood South Africa every time. And I'm sure you will forgive me and agree. I've got Lerato Ntwampe. She's an admitted attorney of the High Court, a social media legal consultant, and a cyber safety enthusiast who heads up advocacy at SFC. And Kate Farina, also an admitted attorney with a background in environmental law, now focusing on child online safety. And she heads up strategy at SFC. She's also the founder of Be in Touch. That's an organization that helps parenting and teachers keep children safer online. But today they're both here in the SFC, what do I call it? Category portfolio. Cap. There we go.
We're ambassadors for sure.
There we go.
One of many
wearing
ambassadors.
those hats. So together they're leading efforts to delay smartphones and promote phone-free schools. Now, we're not saying no one must have a cell phone and this is the be-all and end-all. We're just saying we don't want them in schools. And ladies, I cannot tell you how much I agree with this statement. And we're going to get into it and we're going to explain why. So, Lerato, let's start with you. Why do you think childhood and adolescence, particularly vulnerable times when it comes to smartphone and social media?
Well, I think, children at that age or adolescents are, it's an impressionable age. And, because of the societal pressures, especially from their real life friends as well as their online community, they're very prone to agree to things that, sometimes they don't know that, there are dangers there. So there are dangers, obviously, online that they're not privy to and they think it's just fun. And also, the fear of FOMO, wanting to miss out and feeling like you don't want to be the only one. I think those sort of, decisions make them make poor decisions or decisions, that they're not privy with the information to actually make those decisions to actually act accordingly because they don't necessarily have the tools to navigate the digital realm.
Right. So, I don't want to take away too much from you two ladies, etc. But, I was having a conversation with a friend this week where I was saying, you say the dangers of social media and people imaginally go to this, automatically go to this deep, dark place. It can be as simple as your child's having a bad day and they come across a video that goes, are you down? Are you this? Are you this? Are you this? You are depressed. And then suddenly there's this word in their head and I'm depressed and a label that comes for themselves that necessarily as psychologists know, therapists know, you have to be clinically diagnosed as depressed. But if I watch enough videos that keep telling me that I am that way, I will end up believing that is who I am and that is what I am now and there's no way out, etc., etc. So Kate, you're a mom of two, so I'm sure we're on the same wavelength. You've also got teenagers and you're a lawyer, etc. What then woke you up? What was the moment when you were like, hold on, there's a danger here with this device in a kid's hand?
Yeah, I'm Cindy. You and I have got kids same age. And I think you probably also, back in the day, as our kids were growing up, we realized that we're going to have to get to grips with smart devices. I'm sure also when yours were younger, they had lots of friends who were getting mini iPads coming into their lives. Lots of grandparents think that this is a very positive thing that they do, because unfortunately what the algorithms of any social media platform show an adult is not what they're showing the children. So I think we were a generation of parents and grandparents growing up thinking that tech is a must for our children, that we should give them access early on. And so I had what is probably a very typical experience with my eldest, and that was in grade 4, in fact, with a peer group that he was friendly with that were accessing online pornography. And so that was a silver lining for me, for our family, because we picked it up. We realized that it happened on a play date, and so we could have very good discussions. We could have a look at our own home devices, how we were managing and filtering those. He himself didn't have devices at that stage. But it was interesting to see the responses of other families as I started talking about this. And obviously, we all have that NMK, not my kid. My kid won't. My kid won't.
Amazing.
Yeah, my kid knows what to do online. My kid won't go looking for this. And they're not going looking for content that is scary, horrifying, and age inappropriate. They are being served it.
Yeah.
And so it's not a case of it's just a case of when, because they are eventually going to stumble on it. And our stats show the average age of exposure to pornography of our children is now around age 9. So that is a really young age. So that's really my journey started. There was a lot of scaremongering happening, a lot of talks about what was happening online, but I just felt we didn't know as parents what we should be doing and how we should respond. And that was really how my journey started, trying to find out what were those practical steps. How do you protect your Wi-Fi? How do you protect the devices? How do you set controls and filters on the apps and games that you let your children have access to?
I mean, you touched on quite a few important points there, which is we are the first generation. We are the guinea pigs, is how I feel, of parents, because I can't go to my mom and say, what did you do when I looked online and found whatever? Because lo and behold, and everybody hold on to your hair, I'm 46, but I was there for the start of the internet, but I grew up in this tech-free environment. So our generation as parents can't go to 100 years back and say, well, how did they do it? We are that first generation that's learning about it. And exactly, your child was exposed to pornography at such a young age. You could have done whatever you wanted in your home. Your child's online safety is only safe as the child in their group with the weakest parent. And I'm not saying parents are weak. I'm just saying you're uninformed, and we are trying to inform you about it. So this is why I love a movement like this, because we're saying, guys, they don't need it in schools. They don't need it in schools. Like, I remember very, very clearly that if I needed to get a message home to my mom, I would go to the payphone and phone her. That's a landline. And you would put money in and you would phone home and you would get the message or hope she would get the message. And if you didn't, you just soldiered on, right? Nowadays, parents want the phones in school, so I can just WhatsApp my child directly. While they're in class, concentrating, you want to WhatsApp your child so that they can check what's going on. What is so important that can't wait? So, Lerato, your organization it's part of a global movement because we've seen it big time in Australia. I think Australia is the first country that's really gone forward with this. So what would it look like for children in South Africa? What would that look like? Because the reality is we don't live in a safe society. A lot of children walk home from schools, etc. But what does your organization look like in a South African context?
So I think what we primarily want to do is obviously advocate for phone-free schools, and obviously that would involve, policies within, national policy that will give directive to provincial and then district, and essentially just to ensure that there's smartphone-free schools so that kids are able to learn and teachers are able to teach, because essentially what we're doing, and some of the talks, that we're invited to, is because there is an incident. There's a social media drama, there's cyberbullying, there's hate speech, there's all sorts of these things. And usually they happen in the school context. Sometimes it happens, during the weekend, but then it becomes the school's problem. So that's the first point. And then obviously want to also advocate for social media restrictions for children that are under the age of 16. And essentially that would look like, having an age restriction to join social media. I mean, I've worked for regulators where we actually watch content and actually give, the age restriction and the consumer advisory.
Amazing.
That for games as well as movies. But essentially what we want is that we want it as well for social media, because essentially, although they have all these fancy words, teen accounts and all of that stuff, but kids are actually still exposed to online harms.
Yeah.
And kids that are 12, 11 can have a social media account. There's no age assurance or age verification that actually ensures that the child is that specific age and they can actually consume that content. Kids can easily create an account at 7, 8 years old with no ramifications, essentially because these companies essentially don't, take accountability.
Yeah.
They're not ensuring that those safeguards are there for the children to be protected. And essentially, they data mine and all of these things and expose kids to algorithms that are inappropriate. So essentially, that's what the two things that we're advocating for as SFC.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you just sold it as a lot of parents, you just said to parents, look, we're taking the decision out of your hands. Government has said, I could think of nothing better than if I got a letter from the government, that said, guys, your children may not have smartphones until they are the age of at least 13. And after that, they can't have social media after 16. And if everybody's doing it, then it would be okay.
Yeah. So it's hard. I mean, that is really what SFC is founded on. We're one of 32 chapters actually at the moment around the world.
Love it.
It started in the UK off a WhatsApp group between mums of young kids who are saying this can't be what we're seeing, teenagers on their phones for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. This can't be the future for our kids. Surely we must look at a different norm. And at the same time, of course, the wonderful social psychologist, Dr. Jonathan Haidt, published his book last year, The Anxious Generation, The Great Rewiring of Childhood. And, he's looking at the research and he's standing on the shoulders of giants like Jean Twenge, Dr. Becky Kennedy, Brad Huddleston, many others in this area that have been looking at the research and warning about the mental health signs for a very long time. But what he did so beautifully is he said, let's look at what the possible solutions could be. And so those norms that he has proposed are really what all the smartphone-free chapters around the world are positioned on. And that is firstly trying to encourage parents to delay that choice of giving a smartphone until high school. And why a smartphone? It's just because that is obviously the most desirable accessory for a child. And once a child has it in its pocket, it's a 24/7 accessory. But it doesn't obviously exclude tablets, iPads, any device that is connected to the internet. The second one is, as Lerato has said, is to get phones out of schools.
Yeah.
That there's so much research just saying for the academic day, they cause so much distraction, bring so much digital drama.
Yeah.
And let's just give our kids a break for that. Delay social media until 16. And you're right, we need a shield as parents because it's very hard if you're the one parent trying to delay smartphone or social media, you're standing alone, your child says, but I'm the only one, I'm being left out. And they are left out. If everybody else, is in their classes on Snapchat or TikTok, they are the ones being left out. But how about you and I together both delay? Now suddenly, both our children have got a little safe harbor. And if we get to sort of 25% of our class, we start seeing a tipping point. So this is what he's about. And that's why we have a parent pact for primary school parents, which I'm sure you want to chat a little bit more about. But an interesting thing is as parents started in the last year to group together, come together and to say, yes, I want to delay giving my child a smartphone, giving them this portal to this scary online world that I can't follow them into. They've started talking about EdTech, and that's become obviously a big hot topic, particularly in primary school where schools are saying, from about grade 4, grade 5, okay, guys, parents, we need you to buy an iPad, or we need you to send a laptop, and then suddenly this little beast is coming home and parents are not ready to manage that. So that's the other part of which we are focusing on as an organization, particularly here in South Africa, is the mindful, intentional use of tech in education.
I also sat in on a very, very interesting, what is this? Conference last year. It was in Australia and it was done by a neurologist, and his name has slipped my mind. And he spoke about, and I found this so fascinating, and it was only the one I took lots out of the talk, but the one thing I took out of the talk is that if I'm speaking to you right now and my phone vibrates, anything that happened 90 seconds before that and anything that happens 90 seconds after that, my brain will not remember. That is why if we are not on phones, if you go to a movie and you are not on your phone on the way to a movie, you will remember the movie. But if I use Google Maps on my way to get there, and then I answer a WhatsApp while I'm going into the movie house, and then while I'm in the movie house, I check my phone, I come out, I possibly won't remember A, how I got to the movie, and B, what the movie was about. Now, if we've got smartphones in school, by the way, the fact that you said primary school kids and you said primary school parents, I nearly fell off my chair. I had to keep a straight face. I was like, sorry, what? Primary school kids are having devices? This is crazy. And now if you're going to have a little thing in class that pings every now and then, oh, sorry, ma'am, I forgot to put it on silent, it's distracted. Whatever that teacher has taught your child 90 seconds before and 90 seconds afterwards is gone. And that in itself for me was frightening enough. You've touched on these amazing pillars that you do need. You need the parents, you need the school, and you need the policymakers. Lerato, who are we speaking to in terms of policymakers? What can we do?
Yeah, so there's a few regulators, I think, that will play quite a crucial role in ensuring that we actually get to the objective. Obviously, the Film and Publication Board, which obviously regulates games and it regulates online streaming, as well as certain parts of social media. So in terms of social media, what they regulate is obviously child sexual abuse material, which in South Africa we call child pornography, as well as any sexual violence videos or content that circulate through the internet. As far as I know, they do have a memorandum of understanding with certain tech companies, Meta being one of them, Google, those two, they have a memorandum of understanding to ensure that if there's actually sexual content that's circulating on their platforms, they're able to remove them without needing a court order. Because as an adult, unfortunately, you would need a court order. But as a child, because it's illegal, they are able to take it down as soon as possible. So the Film and Publication Board is a crucial one, as well as obviously other stakeholders like the National Gambling Board. They're essential, especially for online games and gambling. It's quite a crucial one. Then the National Consumer Protection, the National Credit Commission. The National Credit Commission is actually also crucial, especially in advertising, because obviously we're seeing a lot of adverts happening on social media. Kids are using their parents' credit cards to buy, games online. They're swiping their parents' credit cards and buying.
So it's not just Instagram and Snapchat. It's not just YouTube, Instagram. Guys. It's literally, we've got kids gambling.
There's kids who are gambling. There are kids who are using their parents' credit cards to buy goods. And so that commission is quite a crucial one. The information regulator is crucial in ensuring, obviously, that age verification processes and the collection and processing of children's information is considered. So there's quite a lot of stakeholders that obviously need to come to the party. The the Minister of Communication and Digital Technologies also needs to come to the party, because essentially it sits with him. It sits with that department to ensure that obviously the technology is regulated, social media is regulated. So those are some of the regulators that we actually need to come on board, and we need to lobby with them because it's quite crucial. Obviously, the Department of Basic Education as well is quite important, and science and technology is also quite important in the conversation.
It is crucial. It is absolutely crucial that we do have this conversation and that we do have this movement. But how close are we realistically physically to seeing it happen. Have you felt a change? Have you felt a movement? I mean, how long have you guys been running this for? This SFC. I mean, I know it's worldwide, but in
worldwide.
South Africa.
So it really started in the UK early last year. So we were one of the first couple of chapters that reached out and said to them, hey, we'd like to, should we use your logo? Should we, can we use some of the resources? And they were not ready for the kind of interest that they suddenly got. So we've been going, we started in about May last year, but it's a volunteer at the moment, completely volunteer staffed, volunteer funded. So we have recently registered as an NPC so that we can get our PBO certificate and try to get funding, because of course something like this that's just been fueled by volunteers is going to run out of steam if we can't make it sustainable. So that's our very big focus.
But how close are we to, can you feel it?
I think I can certainly feel it in terms of conversations that obviously are being held and had with the regulator. Currently, there is a white paper that, seeks to obviously look at a child online safety. It's obviously not enough because it doesn't really get into the nitty-gritties. So we're hoping that, with public input and public consultation, we can give them a wake-up call to say, actually, you're not even covering the bases. You can't just focus on digital literacy, which is primarily what they want to introduce. As much as digital literacy is important, but we also need policy to hold, these tech companies accountable and to ensure that, parents, have an avenue, because as much as there are, laws that exist that, protect your child from being cyberbullied or that protect, your child from child sexual abuse material, it's not enough because it doesn't really protect them from some of the things that happen on social media, because essentially they don't even know when they tick yes to I agree to the terms and conditions.
Accept all cookies.
So
100%.
We've got quite an intentional, I think, advocacy strategy that we are busy rolling out. With the Department of Education, of course, our focus will be trying to discuss with them the need for national policy around phone-free school spaces, at least phone-free classrooms for the academic day. And the second angle, of course, is around the mindful, intentional and safeguarded use of tech in classrooms and looking at national acceptable use policies around that. So preparing a position paper around that has necessitated the need to get more public opinion. So we are currently running a survey around phone-free schools for parents, caregivers, educators, any interested party to contribute, so that we have better data around what the public is saying. And what they're seeing as well, from obviously parents seeing if children are taking their phones and sitting. And I can tell you, we had that discussion just now about gambling. It's a very, very real, trend at the moment, where kids are sitting in class, placing bets, they're gambling, and they're watching gambling influencers who are sitting in New Zealand, who are themselves taking money so they can place bets. It's become a huge underground challenge for this set of teens. So the second part of our advocacy strategy will be around the social media age restrictions. And right now we're in very close contact with our counterparts in Australia, the Heads Up Alliance, who've been so instrumental in getting the Australian Prime Minister and the head of Minister of Communications there to look at the legislation. Of course, they're going to be the groundbreakers in this regard. Their legislation is going to come in December. And so we're watching that carefully to see what we can learn from that. And we will be running then next a social media survey just to get a sense on where, again, parents, caregivers, educators feel we should be aiming for as a country, because social media platforms are not regulated. They are self-regulated. So I
think parents are angry, and I think parents do care about this. That's why I'm so glad that you've brought this SFC to South Africa, because I do think that we're just looking for how. We always say, South Africa is a very giving nation. If we ask people to donate, they will. They want to give money. They just don't know where. South African parents do care about the well-being of their children. And I do believe that this is the right avenue if enough parents get behind SFC and support SFC, because at the end of the day, excuse me, but President Cyril Ramaphosa is not the parent of my child. I am the parent of my child. But I need him to help parent all the children so that we could have the legislation, because it's going to be a lot easier for me. It's going to take so much stress off me as a parent to know that my child is not doing literally giving themselves damage to their brains from cell phones. They don't need it in schools. But it's equally as we say that. And I mean, you can present so much data about how 2 hours of online for a girl and 3 hours for online for a boy equates to does the same damage to your brain as an alcoholic does, as what alcohol would do to their brain. Now, would you be serving your child champagne at school? No. So why are you allowing them phones in the classroom? I know, bad example. I know I'm comparing peaches and oranges, but it's the same thing, right? Because we are damaging the brains. There are going to be parents who push back, though, and say, if we don't do the ed tech in the classroom, and you touched on the ed tech, Kate, my child's going to fall behind. AI is going to come and take their job because they didn't know how to drag the keypad and do the coding or whatever it is in class that they need. So what is the counter argument to parents who are saying, if we don't allow the devices in the classrooms, the children are going to be left behind?
Yeah. We're not an anti-tech organization, so I just want to make that point up front. We are for a lower and slower tech approach to childhood, so making much more, more mindful decisions about when and how and what kids are accessing. So we believe that tech has a very important role to play in education, but I think that we're not giving it enough thoughtfulness, and the approach has been sort of almost, especially since COVID and all the kids had to come home onto devices. We haven't stopped and thought about it. How much are we actually using tech? Is it supplementing teaching, or is it replacing teaching? Is it a gap filler? What kind of apps are really proven to assist, whether it's maths or science or, and there are subjects like coding and robotics where absolutely we need the tech, and our kids will need to learn how to do that. But does that have to happen on a device that a parent has to send and that comes back home again? Or can that happen on devices that are, situated at school? And of course, this brings us to then the debate around the digital divide. But we have to then look, are we, by requiring children to bring a smartphone to school so that they can be educated because the school is under-resourced and doesn't have devices, are we just not replacing one harm for another? So should we not be focusing on the primary harm, which is that our schools are under-resourced, and we need to look at helping them to develop computer centers where children can access in a safe way through firewalls, through mobile device management protections, with the school applying its duty of care to safeguard those children, but not making it the problem of parents in the afternoons and the evenings to suddenly try and manage what is going on in the name of homework, what's going on these devices. Parents are not ready for it. They're too busy. They don't have the capacity for it. I've been in this industry for 8 years. It's hard. I practice it. I've researched it. It's very hard for parents to keep children safe on devices.
It is, and I think it's very hard for parents who are overwhelmed and stretched and working from 6 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night to make sure that now I must go check my child's device. Life is also easier with a device. So we're not saying, and I love that you said that, we're not pushing for no tech. We're not pushing for nothing. We're just saying not in school, guys, just not in school. And it's the same as, because people say, my kids always say, but when you were growing up. I said, no, when I was growing up, if I wanted to watch TV, that's a device. That's a screen. I could only watch KTV between 3 and 5. And even then I had to go to my neighbor because they had Mnet and we didn't have Mnet, right?
Yes.
There was a start and there was a finish. There's no cutoff time with these smartphones. We're not saying we don't want your children to have smartphones. We're saying at school, they don't need them. And at home, we need to monitor it, because you are affecting their brains. You're affecting their ability to socialize. You're affecting all of
values and their beliefs.
All of it. All of it is being warped by what they see online. And wouldn't it be amazing if the big man waved his stick and said, all the children? That's like a relief for parents.
Well, the big man has famously said that our second pandemic after COVID was GBV, gender-based violence. And he said that many times. And yet you look at one of the big factors for gender-based violence is the early and ongoing access to pornography. And so if we can just have a look at a relook at how this generation is growing up and their early and then continued and easy access to, horrific. There isn't any soft pornography on the online world.
No.
And this is all changing the beliefs, the value systems, how children are growing up thinking a normal sexual relationship looks like. And it's so just to delay that until their brains are ready
Guys,
to go online just makes so much
16,
sense. Just makes so much sense.
When they kind of, I mean, they don't know who they are. We don't know who we are. I mean, we're in our 40s going, who am I? Where am I? I don't know. It's okay. They definitely don't know who they are. And they don't need other strange people on the internet telling them who they are. And I love it because locally, I do know off the top of my head, I know St. Mary's have done it. They've done away with school, with cell phones in school. Right,
yes, my daughter's there, yeah.
Okay,
so
fantastic.
She started there this year, and it's been wonderful experience. We're hoping to have the management team there soon on one of our webinars and give us some feedback on the experiences. And it's a culture change, and it's a step-by-step process. There's lots of learnings. There's many other schools, St. John's College, JP Boys, St. Cyprian's in Cape Town. There's
Rondebosch in Cape Town.
So we're seeing a huge move. We've got a phone-free school register, so we're encouraging schools that are going phone-free to sign up because parents also want to make good choices about high schools for their primary schools and high schools, but they are looking to see which schools are focusing purely on education and are removing the distraction of smartphones from that education process.
And I'm sure, Lerato, you've met schools that have gone, no, we need the phones to communicate with the children, to tell them what's happening, right? And for me, that's just not a good enough excuse.
It's not. And also parents saying that I need to get a hold of my child in case of a crisis, but you can call, the reception area and be able to communicate with your child through that. But I think there is that resistance, but I think it is quite important because essentially more and more, schools are having these issues, of smartphones in schools and just the digital drama that takes place. And then, they have to invite Lerato to come and speak to the kids, about the social media policy or invite the parents to remind the parents that parents, you need to do this and you need to do that and some of the dangers that exist. And we're seeing quite, issues that are really, really massive. Some parents even, going through the legal route, suing each other because of something that happened, on the school premises. So I think, this can really, really, change the dynamic and the culture. And kids can also just be kids. They don't need to be, vlogging, their every day and actually compromising their safety, compromising, their reputational harm that they, obviously still trying to navigate, and obviously also exposing them to online harms that exist, whether it's strangers, wanting to send them inappropriate content, or convincing them to buy products that they don't need. All these hauls that we're seeing on our social media feeds, they shape your child's identity and they shape, who your child wants to become. And sometimes those things can be dangerous, especially if kids or, parents are not monitoring what's happening. So I think it's a shift and a movement that I'm proud to be a part of.
Good.
And I hope that it will, I hope that more parents will actually join and see the benefit of their kids just being kids.
Well, I mean, you've definitely got my support, hands down. It's not even a debate. I think this is for the parents. You need to know that although you like to think that you will not always be there for your child, and your child having a phone with them in school allows them to behave in a certain way, knowing that you yourself are contactable 24 hours a day. So as much as you say, well, the kids are messaging the parents and, the parents are messaging the kids can also message your parents. You need to you need to teach your child, because a lot of parents complain, oh, my child doesn't have grit, my child doesn't have determination, my child doesn't have resilience. How do they learn that? If what's happening in the classroom can be fed straight back to my mother straight away without me having to sit down and have the conversation with her. I don't have to wait till after school, till I've had time to calm down and think it out myself and work it out myself. I've just got my mom straight there. I can just go to the bathroom and phone her. Now, look, I personally have had my child at school and grateful that she did have a phone because she was being emotionally and socially bullied. So it was a relief for me that she could phone me. And I remember reaching out to the school and saying, I need my child to have her phone because she's being bullied and I need her to be able to phone me at break. And the teacher turned around and said, she needs to learn as well that she can come to an adult, a teacher, so that we can also understand what's going on in her life. I actually get goosebumps thinking about it because I never saw it that way. It's teaching your children to actually ask somebody else besides you for help, because they might need help from an adult about you one day. And at least now you've taught them how to approach an adult. And I loved what you said, Lerato. Teachers can focus on school and children's well-being without competing with the phone all the time. And I'm so excited for this movement.
And I think you've raised it's more the extreme of a bullying example, but there's a lot of drama, mini dramas that happen in a school day. And this is the perfect time, the chance that our children have to develop those crucial interpersonal skills that they need. They've got to learn to resolve problems that they have in their relationships with their peers. And if they're not given that chance during break time, in the hallways between classes, to be looking each other in the eye, to be having those discussions, to be practicing being human. If they're always looking on their phones and easy diversion into checking their Instagram feed, we are preventing them from growing into the fully functional adults they need to be to eventually leave the nest. And I don't know about you, but my definition of victory is for my children to leave home. I would love them one day.
My
much as
husband
I
will
love
disagree.
them.
Apparently they're living with us forever. They've already told me that I'm moving into their room and they're moving into my room. And I said, it's perfect. I love it. But yes, they do have to leave,
They
Kate.
do have to. I know it's sad and I love mine dearly. But that should be the definition of victory for any parent, is that you want your child to be able to be independent and able to look after themselves and to go into the big wide world and make their own difference. But we are finding a lot of children that are hitting university and flunking because they don't have those interpersonal skills. It's amazing. They can't make a phone call. They can't go and hand their CV in at the local coffee shop to get a job. They don't have all these little micro skills that were needed to be learnt on the way because it was so much easier just to divert all that boredom itch that, when you got that rush and you needed some dopamine as in your teen years, easier just to pick up the phone and to get your dopamine rush.
And they don't have social skills. I mean, I've been in a queue at Home Affairs and they literally on their phones. They can't even ask whether they're in the right line because they don't have social skills. Like when I was growing up, I'm a 90s kid, but we would have conversations and you would actually know whether I'm in the right queue. You would speak to the lady and you'd have conversation about what's happening in the country or whatever. And that could actually help you sometimes get the assistance that, actually, I don't need to be in this line. So now you find them standing in the line. They have no clue, because they don't want to talk to anybody. They just want to be on their device.
Right, we laugh, but you're right. And it's just about reading the room. And Kate, you said, we want to send them into the world as these well-rounded individuals. Yeah. But part of that is also being able to look at a human next to you and see that person's not okay, as opposed to not being aware of what's going on around you because you were so busy on your phone. So I'm going to ask each of you this. I'll share mine first, and then you guys can think about it while I answer my own question, which is, what is a step that a parent can take today to, something that they can do to move in the right direction? And for me, I'm not a fan of Apple phone because it doesn't take nice pictures, and I really like Android, but I had to get an Apple phone because both my girls got hand-me-downs, and those were Apples. So I went and I used screen time. Yeah. And so if my children do take their devices to school, which they're not allowed to, but sometimes they do, and they request screen time at a random time of the day, guess what? I don't approve it. So they can't be on their phone because me as the parent has gone, no. Why do you need Snapchat at 10 a.m.? It's break. Go speak to your friends, etc. Sometimes they come back and go, there's nobody to talk to. And I'm like, tough, tackies, because they can still iMessage, right? But that is the one step that I've taken to safeguard how much time I can monitor what they're doing on their phones is screen time. Do you guys have one step that a parent can take today to move in the right direction of, the child, monitoring their child online and how much time?
Jeepers, one step.
Okay.
I think my golden
I always
step.
say one because people often have more to say. I like to just say, well, if you could just think of one.
Okay, so we're talking about parents that already have given their children smartphones.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you haven't yet,
don't
go onto our website and sign the pact.
What's the website?
www.icf SFC-SA.co.za.
We will say it again just now. Yep.
So find your child's school, your primary school. All the primary schools in the country are loaded up, and head on in there and sign the pack, and then spread the word. Get the rest of your child's class on board now, if you can. So first of all, make that decision today. That listen to the research, check it out on our website, do some reading, really upskill yourself, but really understand this is the biggest gift you can give your child. Is if you've got the opportunity to delay the smartphone or the iPad, then do that. If you've got the opportunity still to delay social media, absolutely do that. But if you are already in this position where your child has a smartphone, perhaps already has access to social media, you've spoken about parental controls, Cindy, absolutely. On the device, on the Wi-Fi, and every single app and game as well has its own built-in controls that you can do to one extent or another. For me, if I had to choose the golden rule, it is no devices in rooms at night. So the research that I've done over the years through Be in Touch, honestly, we are living in a perfect storm where we've got children who have phones at an early age, have had access to social media, 80% of them actually by age 12. And about 70% tell us that they don't have parental filters or controls, and the majority say they're allowed to have those devices in their rooms overnight. And yet all of them say, when we ask them, where does most of the cyberbullying and stranger contact happen? They're saying it's mostly on social media apps, and it's mostly late at night. So it's this perfect storm. We've got tired brains making bad decisions.
And hormones.
Yeah, there we go. These young prefrontal cortexes where the impulse control is not yet fully developed. Exactly. And so for me, I think if I had to give you one, it would be, I would pick from as early as possible, but otherwise from tonight, is set a new rule for your family. Is get devices out of rooms at night. Charge them somewhere else. It means mum and dad also have to do that because we've got a role model. So you need to charge your phone somewhere where you can hear them if there's an emergency. But that is one of the biggest things we can do for our children.
I wanted to say that model good behavior as a parent.
Love it.
And be involved. I think, by having phone-free zones, every time I pick my siblings up from school, we sit in the car. It's a phone-free zone because we're then able to engage. How was your day? And you can't just say it was fine. We have to have a conversation. And also, being involved, be on the apps as well. I know it can be daunting, but being on the apps can be so helpful because, most of what I find out from my siblings is because I ask them about it. Oh, have you seen this challenge? Or they tell me, I've seen this challenge. This is the challenge. And because they know that I work in this space, they always give me, what's happening. And it's something that I can be like, okay, that's not really great. I would suggest, you stay away from that. And they used to have this thing, teenagers have this thing on Instagram where they will tag all their friends so that they obviously get maximum likes and maximum, comments or engagement. And I told them that it's actually not safe to do that. Make sure that your account is on private. And because I'm on the apps as well, I'm able to sort of guide them better that, block certain things. If you're having, a bad time, mute certain words so that you're actually able to safeguard yourself from some of the situations. So if there's a graduation, and you're not graduating and it makes you feel some type of way, mute it. If there's a party that you're not invited to, mute it so that you don't see the post. So there's certain things that you can do, and ensuring that you have constant conversations with them that can really, really do help them, because sometimes if kids can't come to you, it's very difficult. I remember a situation where my brother, he's very much into fashion and he was wearing weird pants and he posted it on social media. But because I know of his interest and he was getting backlash, he already knew what to do, because it's a conversation that we've had that, people might not understand, that you have different things and you're way ahead in terms of this fashion thing. They don't understand that this is coming actually next season and you're actually going to be cool, but you're not cool now. But, so those are the conversation. If you're in constant conversation with your child or your sibling, it's easier to help them navigate it.
Absolutely love it, guys. I think you've highlighted some very important things, which is cell phones are not going anywhere, but they don't have to be in the classroom. They can be used as a tool to connect with your child, to see what they enjoy and get to know your child better. But they don't have to be on it 24 hours so that they can establish who they are. And I'm sure people are going to want to join your movement. www. SFC-SA.co.za.
And they can also follow us on the socials, SFC South Africa, on all of the platforms. Yeah.
Any last words? Anything we missed? Anything we skipped?
I would like to say in closing, smartphones, can be a weapon that can actually be used, if not used correctly, can be a weapon, that can actually, mess up your child's
harm your child,
future, as well as their safety. So, you just need to ensure that, all the parental controls are in place. And if you're not ready to have serious conversation, uncomfortable conversations with your children, they shouldn't have a smartphone.
I think from my side, I think we're talking about childhood, and childhood is right up until 18. And it's such a fleeting and precious time of life that really what our movement is about is trying to give our kids back childhood. So more time offline to play, to create, to discover, and to grow. And that is really just being more intentional as parents in this modern age, which is so difficult, about the amount of time they are spending online and where they're spending that, and encouraging them to spend more of it. Scratch that boredom itch offline, and mostly we're amazed what happens when we do encourage our kids to do that.
All the creativity will flow back. Thank you, Kate and Lerato, for coming in today. www.sfc-SA.co.za. That's where you're going to find the practical tools, how to navigate the space, but most importantly, that's where you're going to find the parent pact to try and get your school on board. Your life will be easier if your school gets on board in a cell phone-free environment for your child. Because as much as you are giving your child a phone, it gives them access to the world, you're giving the world access to your child. And don't you want to be the person who fights for their childhood back? Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Teen Junction podcast. We hope you've gained something from this or learnt something from this. Please reach out on our socials to us if there's any topic you'd like us to cover. Until then, get yourself educated.
It's sleek, fresh, and fast. Everyone, anywhere can hop on to primemediaplus.com.